Hey everybody, today we are going to interview a person with over 9 years of experience in Java JTB, microservices, and Spring Boot. We are going to test him on his basics and as well cover some of the advanced concepts. So, with that being said, without further ado, let's get started. Hey Rajan, good morning.
Yeah, hi Ashwin. Ashwin, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
For a start, can you please introduce yourself and give a small overview on your career so far and the technologies that you've been using?
Sure, yeah. Both the application are done on the Java stack only. So we are using Spring Boot, Java, and Spring JPA, and we use couple of databases. Like actually for these two application, for OData we are using the Blaze Graph as a database, which is a NoSQL database, graph knowledge, and for the configuration application we are using Postgres database, and also we have one another database which is used to store the time series data which we are getting from the field devices, which is the InfluxDB. So these are all the databases we are using in our product. So far I've been with Siemens for currently 3 years. So before that I have worked with Accenture for the client Credit Suisse. It's an investment banking platform, and I worked on application called Docs. So wherein like all the trades which are booked, which will be like flowing via this application, wherein like we generate the confirmation document by passing through certain workflows. So that is the application which I worked earlier.
Okay,
Prior to
okay,
this, and before that I have work experience with Infosys and HCL. With Infosys I worked for Apple, and with HCL I worked for Jetta Corporation.
great, great.
And my day-to-day responsibility would be like I'm mainly working as an individual contributor, and my 90% of the time would be like spent in developing the code, analyzing the requirement and all those things, and remaining 10% of the work I in this OData application we have another two more member working on that, so I'll be like guiding them.
Okay, okay.
That's
So
pretty
thanks,
much.
thanks for the detailed intro, Raj. So, so how do you rate yourself? So I think you're pretty much into the technical
Correct.
development perspective, right? So not much
Yes.
of management. So we are actually looking into those lines only.
Okay.
So how do you
In
rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in Java?
I would rate around 8 to 9.
Okay, okay. And since like you're now around 12 years of experience, right? You have around
Correct.
12 years of experience. So what are the design patterns that you've been using?
So okay, so I have used facade design pattern, singleton, observer. This mostly this Ganga for design pattern. So wherever the scenario rises, so I have used most of them. Recently, I have used a facade design pattern to implement the IAM functionality. So if I have to give an intro, shall I go about and explain in which scenario I have used?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah,
That would
so
be great.
we have two UI portals for our product. One is like the admin portal, and one another one is called the Asset Explorer. So admin portal, as the name suggests, which will be used by the admin people from the industry or like the factory, which we are talking about, where this product will be installed. So and these people has the tendency, or like they have the what they should have the ability to add or delete user basically. So in that scenario they will be like calling this application configuration with the request of adding or deletion of the user basically, or like whatever be the role change also, that is also possible. If they want to change the role of the existing user, that also can be done. So when the request comes into the picture, so here we are using Keycloak as the IAM provider. So and we will be like calling the Keycloak endpoint to add, delete, or like manipulate the user roles. So basically, so here we have used this facade design pattern to hide the complexity, or like it's basically the user, the admin user they want to just use the add the user or delete the user or change the role of the user. So they don't bother about what is the complexity behind it. So here we are putting a facade and we are hiding the complexity and we are doing the
And Rajan, sorry to interrupt. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
yeah.
So the question I have now is
Mm-hmm.
like, so you seem to have put in a project called trade validation, right? So that's your
Yes.
latest project, or
No, that is my previous one.
APS is your
APS
latest
it's my
project, right?
yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so if you could share your screen
Okay.
and explain the design associated with it, it would be great for me. So how a request comes in and the entire duration or the life cycle of the project. So what are the things that you're making use of, so that we can
Okay.
discuss on the technologies associated with it.
Okay. Okay. Let me know once you're able to see.
Yep, yep. So we are able to see it.
Okay. So yeah, we have this. Okay, for this workflow, we have this app called admin. So this is a UI, and we will be it will be calling the application called configuration, and we have this IAM provider. So the workflow would be like, sorry, not this front. Where is
So you don't need to be like too specific on
okay?
the design. So just
Okay.
a little set of boxes and how things work and what
Yeah.
is the technology associated
Yeah.
with it would be great.
Yeah. Sure. So here the actor would be the admin people, admin users. So they will be calling, they will be using basically the admin UI. Once they log into the admin UI, they will have a list of users they can see. So if they want to add a new user into the system, so what they will do is like they will be clicking on the add user dialog in the UI, and they will give out the information which is necessary to get the user added into the system. And once they fill in the information, they send out the what the request. Post request to the configuration. Basically, here the endpoint is secured via the admin role. So whoever has the admin role, they only can do the user addition or user deletion or user manipulation. So once the user request reaches the configuration, we check the role. So basically, the incoming request will contain a token JWT. So in the token, we will be checking against the IAM whether that particular request is having the proper role or not. Here, admin is the role. So once the role is there, then we will the request will go further into it, and we'll be calling the key clock facade, so that and here it will just consume the information which is sent from the request, and a user will get created or deleted in the IAM basically, and a response of 200 will be sent back, or like an appropriate response if the incoming request token is not having the sufficient role, then 402 or like what appropriate response will be like sent back to the user.
Okay. So you're also part of the UI development or only the backend?
I have been part of the UI development, but last year I have worked. That was the only chance I got to work. So I have around 8 months of UI experience, but I'm mainly a backend developer. We
Okay.
have used
Okay. So
Angular 9 as the UI front end.
okay. So we are not that much into UI. So the requirement is for the backend. So with
Okay.
respect to microservices, so what are the aspects of microservices that you used here, and what are the features that you try to cover up in your application or made use of in your application?
So, okay, with respect to the microservices, we have taken security as the primary thing, because these are whatever the information or like whatever the things which are present as part of the configuration application or the configuration DB. So those are like I would say like those are like really sensitive in nature, because if that get lost or if that gets leaked means it will be like a primary issue. So what we have done is like we have created our own we have used Spring Security as the basic core. On top of it we have developed a wrapper around it. We have our own security library which we call it as FBC IAM library. So with that library we check each and every incoming token, so whether it is having a valid credential or not. If it is having a valid permission, then only we are allowing it to access.
So the
Otherwise,
security framework is inbuilt, or did you provide
security
any?
fr- no,
Yeah.
security framework, we have taken Spring Security as a core and we have
Mhm.
built on top of it. So that is Siemens internal security framework we have used,
So you're using
but
a
it is based out of
exist.
Spring Security.
Okay, so that's an existing framework that you're using. So you're not actively involved with the coding with respect to how security works internally, or
Actually, there is a different team. Initially, I was part of it. Then, because of some budget constraint, the team got disassembled. Or like there was only one person working because of budget constraint. So it's mainly worked out from Germany. So the people
okay,
from
so
India were
so
not
the
involved.
security aspect is fine.
Hmm.
So any other things like microservices in the sense, have you used Eureka gateways, etc., in your application,
Yeah,
or
we have used Nginx as a gateway. That is the gateway we have using in our product. So we have not used the Spring API gateway because our application is the architecture is based out of the Nginx as a gateway. So whenever the request comes in, so it will surpass the Nginx will be like looking into that, and basically and it will the request will be navigated here. I will put it if I have to put. I will put in the middle. So here the Nginx will be like kept in place. So only the request will be like navigated from delegated from Nginx to configuration. Like configuration is one of the application. We have so many other microservices, as I said, like OData is another one, and like that in the product architecture we have a number of microservices present.
so Nginx as a gateway? So how do you communicate from your Java application?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
How do you communicate with it through your Java application?
Uh, from Java to Nginx, you are asking.
Yeah.
So, mm, sorry, I don't recall that.
Okay. So you're not directly calling anything with respect to the API gateway. So how is the communication taking place internally?
No, no. See, the request will come from UI to Nginx. Then
Mm-hmm.
Nginx will delegate the request to configuration application,
Mm-hmm.
and the configuration application it will either talk to Postgres database or the Keycloak or whatever the other microservices it needs to talk to. It will do in that manner.
Okay. So how does that do? So how does that call each service, or
Okay,
how
so
does
we
that
have
communicate with the other services?
okay,
Yeah.
so we have deployed each and everything under the Docker. So when we have deployed, everything will be like shipped and working under in one environment. So we will be there is let's say we have one more services called Data Federation. If configuration needs to talk to Data Federation, we know the port and the name of the services in which name it gets deployed locally in the AWS or Azure environment. So we call directly its internal call only. So we call on the 8080 port where this data federation application is deployed, and we get whatever we need to do the business logic, then we will do it basically.
Okay. Okay. So you're also interacting with the database, right? So using the
Correct,
API, I suppose.
correct.
So are you using the API in this project,
Yeah, yeah, we are using
or
JPA,
Spring
correct.
GPA, or like Hibernate or something
Spring
like
JPA, correct.
Okay. Okay. So how do you handle transactions, or like say you're having Postgres, right?
Mhm.
So are there only is it only a single database or multiple databases associated?
Okay, so with respect to configuration application, it's just a single database.
Mm-hmm.
So we are calling configuration application will be talking solely to this Postgres database. So
Mm-hmm.
how we are maintaining the transaction is like by annotating the key method with @transactional. If at
Mm-hmm.
all we have to take a lock on it, then we will take a pessimistic lock. Actually, we have encountered a situation wherein like this admin can, we have a concept of connectors and data source, which is nothing but the field devices. So if one person is manipulating this connector or the data source, then no other person should be allowed to manipulate basically. So in that scenario, we will be like using this, we'll be taking a pessimistic write lock or read lock basically on the row where this connector or the data source is present in the database, and we'll be doing our business logic, and at the end of the business logic we'll be like
Okay. Okay.
releasing
So
the
so
lock.
you said there is going to be a pessimistic lock. So when would you go for a pessimistic lock, and when will you go for an optimistic lock?
Okay, so as I said, we have used this pessimistic lock because when there is a concurrent user is trying to manipulate the same resource, in that
Mm-hmm.
scenario, we will be taking a pessimistic lock. So that only one person can do the manipulation on the row, so that no other will be like basically if somebody else is trying to manipulate that row, they'll be thrown with the pessimistic lock exception error,
Mm-hmm.
so that there will be only one person who has the access to the row. They will do whatever the changes needs to be done on that row. Once they do the changes, then they release the lock, so that the second person or whoever is waiting in the queue, they will take up the lock and they can do the transaction.
Okay. Okay. So like going a bit further. So have you
Hmm.
used multi-threading concepts in your project in this project?
Yes, yes,
Okay. So like you said, you adopted pessimistic locking. Okay.
yes.
So now, say if you are using a multi-threaded application, or like you're trying to access this
Hmm.
parallelly
Hmm.
or concurrently, I would say.
Hmm.
So how would you handle this? So will the transaction management system take care of itself, or you will need to take care of it from the threading perspective as well?
No, no, that I would say like because we have tested this scenario also, so the Spring JPA will take care of it because you cannot give the lock to multiple person. When you are taking a lock on a row, it's just going to be a single person. Even though there are two requests is trying to take the lock, it's ultimately it's one guy is going to succeed in taking the lock, and that person will be like given the lock for doing the manipulation, and the other person will be thrown with the exception of pessimistic lock exception, and it will be like once the first person is done with the business, then only the second person will be like given.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, so I have one last scenario to ask
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like say I have an application.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which is like a web service call. Okay, keep it as
Mm-hmm.
a microservice call. Okay,
Fine.
I am say there is going to be a master-child relationship. Okay, to the data.
Okay.
Okay, so like there are two channels associated with it,
Mm-hmm.
and a master and a channel. Say you can think of it as being a profile. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
say like you are there's going to be a set of master data, and there's going to be a set of child data. So child data can be a lot of things coming in from different channels, but there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a primary master data or master channel. Okay,
Okay.
so now if you have these two threads coming in and accessing the database and doing the same operations,
Mm-hmm.
okay, on your database, so how will you handle that and ensure that only the thread with respect to the master updates the master data, and the thread associated with the child thread updates the child data?
Okay, so we have this concept of cascading, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
can take the cascading on the all level, so that once the lock is obtained on the parent level, so subsequently the child will also be locked out. so that no other thread will can access those things also. So that only when the parent is done with that, then only the child will also be released.
Okay,
So that
okay. So
even
if
though there
you,
are
yeah.
multiple threads are accessing, there will be only one person who will be get to manipulate.
Okay, so is there a way to like use something called as futures or using executive framework here in this? So have you used executive framework and
Yeah,
futures?
yes, I have used executive framework.
So what is a future?
Future is something like it's like async call. We will be making a call so that, and we are not waiting for the response immediately. So that whenever that thread completes its execution, it will give out the response and it will be stored in the form of future object. So that, and we can get the information out of the future object what the response we have got as part of the transaction.
Okay, say you're getting it in the future means, so how are you going to handle it in the application? Say you're handling a set of 100 records, so how
Mhm.
is it that you're going to take care of the future execution results? So how are you going to update? So I'm just asking you how you're going to handle a future response.
Okay. Hmm. Okay, even though we are getting hundreds of requests, ultimately one person is going to get the lock and they're going to manipulate, and okay, and the response will be returned in the form of a future object. So we have to keep on be what
So these, okay, I'll put it in another way. So you're getting the list of future objects. So how
mhm.
will you get the response from that future, and how are you going to handle the data? So I'm just asking in those links.
Okay. Mm,
Okay, okay, that's okay. So you answered pretty well on most of the things, so that's okay. So going into the database side, okay.
okay.
So what are the databases you're using or you have used so far?
So I have currently in our project we are using Postgres, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm also working on the NoSQL database graph database, which is
Mm-hmm.
BlazeGraph.
Mm-hmm.
In my earlier project we have used Oracle MySQL. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah these are all the four things which I have
Any
used.
luck with MongoDB?
No, MongoDB only theoretical knowledge I have.
Okay, that's okay. So a question on NoSQL. Okay,
Mm.
so why is a NoSQL database needed over an RDBMS like Oracle or MySQL?
Okay, so the main reason I would say is like the performance. So when
Mm-hmm.
the traditional RDBMS database grows over in a period of time, in the period of months, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
when it crosses certain million records, then even though we are applying indexes on a certain column where we are applying the var class, still the performance will not be like super fast or like the expected one. So in that is the main reason we have moved from the traditional RDBMS to a NoSQL database. Uh, yeah, the current, if I have to give out the performance of my current database, which I am using BlazeGraph. Okay, so BlazeGraph as a database, if you see, it contains of only three columns: subject, predicate, and object, and each of the row which has been stored, ideally it is with respect to a database they are not related to each other. But if you have to make a relationship out of the data which have been stored in the database, then you have to do the stuff on your own. And the number of and each of the row it is called a triple. So and the number of triples which can be stored in a single blaze graph is like is like billions in number. And also the read operation to which the performance of a read operation is, it's so fast compared to the traditional RDBMS database. I don't remember the number how
Okay,
fast it
okay.
is,
So that's
but
okay.
it is.
That's okay. That's okay. So for NoSQL, you said. So why do you say it is better at scaling out? Say if I want to improve my performance
Mm-hmm.
to a large extent. Okay, say I'm achieving a performance of 10 milliseconds on a node of two or three clusters. If I want to scale out and if I want to use more than that and achieve far lesser performance, why is NoSQL able to achieve it more than RDBMS?
because okay, the way the data structure or like the way the data is stored in RDBMS database is the pain point here. But with respect to the NoSQL database, the way in which the data is stored is like if we take a Cassandra database, we can, it's like a wide column database, right? So we can associate all the relevant information for a particular user under one column only, one column value only. So the read operation, if whatever we need to apply the where class or something, it's just we are going to search only one row. It's not like we are going to search multiple rows where this where class is going to be applied across. But
Okay.
if you see the NoSQL database, it's just we know where the where class needs to be applied, or we know a subset where this where class needs to be applied, so that only those information will be like returned. So it improves the performance significantly. But in case of RDBMS, we have to, in addition to the indexes, also you have to apply on a wide range of rows, basically.
Okay. Okay. So one more thing I was expecting was transactions and say the integrity constraints, etc. So that's okay. So we don't need those things, right? So those actually help us a lot.
No, no.
And
With respect to, okay, since yeah, we are dealing with the bank, yeah, transactional data integrity is like is like absolute thing we have to deal with. In this scenario, yeah,
so
obviously
you're saying that you need to maintain that, right? So then coming to the next question. Okay. So have you heard about cap theorem?
uh, I have heard of it, but I don't recall it well actually.
Okay. Okay. So because NoSQL primarily works with respect to cap theorem, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just looking at what it is. So consistency, availability, etc. Okay. Okay. So that's pretty much about it with databases. So do you have experience with messaging systems like Kafka, etc.?
Yeah, I have worked in MQs. I have not worked with Kafkas. I have used IBM MQ, and currently we are using Rabbit MQ for our messaging systems.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. Okay. So, Shubhani, you have any more questions?
So, like for intercommunication of services, where to use REST and where to use the messaging framework? What do you think?
Okay, so if you messaging framework is something like you deliver it, and somebody would like consume it, and they do it's something like async thing. So when you want to do a job which is not actually associated with you, if you want the response immediately, and based out of the response, if you are going to do some business logic, then calling using REST service makes sense. But when let's say if there is a error has occurred in the system, and if that needs to be captured in the logger system, so there is no need of like calling the web service. In this case, you just have to publish that error into the messaging system, so that the logger system will consume that message, and they will publish it in the dashboard, basically.
And you have worked with Spring Boot, right?
Sorry, your
Spring Boot.
voice is a bit feeble.
Spring Boot, have you worked with?
Yeah, yeah, I have used the Spring Boot. We are using it.
Okay. So, what all annotations have you used there?
So we have used basically whatever the basic stuff like at the rate services. We are not using auto wire because mostly we are going with the constructor based auto wiring, and also at the rate bean, at the rate enable MQ, at the rate enable async to run the thread to spawn a new thread in one of the business logic. We have used that. Then what else? Spring Boot application. Then um, service at the rate configuration we have used. Mm, These are all pretty much I can remember.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ashwin, like I'm done with it.
Okay. Okay. So, Rajan, do you have any questions for us?
Uh, I just want to know what is the project or like the project you people are working on, and also I just want to know the technical stack behind it.
Okay. So, the product we are working on is more or less kind of a data store.
Okay.
So, the technical stack or the person who's going to work with us should ideally be good in Java,
Mm-hmm.
Kafka, MongoDB.
Okay.
So, since you're pretty knowledgeable on NoSQL, that shouldn't be an issue. So it's just another variant of a NoSQL database, and as well microservices. As well, if you have a little bit of a knowledge on Spark or a working knowledge of Spark, it would be great as well.
Spark in the sense like
Apache Spark.
Apache Spark. Okay. I'm actually reading on my own.
Okay, okay, that's okay. And with respect to the cloud infrastructure, we are using Pivotal Cloud Foundry.
Okay.
And with respect to, you have experience with continuous integration as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. We have CI/CD integrated.
So, what are the frameworks that you're using with respect to that?
We are using Jenkins.
Okay, and code versioning system?
Yeah, it's a GitLab. I have also
GitLab.
experience with SVN also.
Okay, so we're using Jenkins as well as Bitbucket,
Okay.
and for code versioning and for CI/CD. So that's pretty much it. That's the tech stack that we have and we are looking for. So mostly it's microservices, Kafka, like message queuing, as well as NoSQL experience along with some RDBMS experience in the future,
Okay.
and as well massive parallel processing frameworks like Spark.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No, that's all.
Okay. So thanks, Rajan. So we are done with the interview. So you might receive a call or a feedback in some time.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much for your time.